Today we're talking about how to tell the difference between your intuition and fear in real time, before you send the text, before you go on a second date, before you talk yourself into something your body already answered. You've asked yourself this question 100 times. This episode gives you a clear, body-based way to actually feel the difference in the moment. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now so you don't miss what's coming this season. Today is going to be a really practical episode, and we're going to talk about a skill that you need to learn if you want to figure out how to follow your heart and find that relationship you're looking for. You need to be able to discern the difference between intuition and fear. And I get asked this all the time. It's like, how can you tell if I'm getting these messages that are just fear-based messages that I'm afraid to open my heart, or I'm afraid to get hurt again, or I'm afraid to just dive in, versus my intuition saying, just don't do this and go running in the other direction. So I want to give you an idea of like the contrast between an intuitive signal and a fear-driven thought, grounded in specific dating moments that you can recognize from your own life. And this is going to go deeper than some of the concepts that I covered in episode 53, because I wanted to go more deeply into it since it is such a popular episode. We're going to think about the in the moment times when it's like, how do I figure this out in the date, or immediately after the date, or even just prior to the date when you're getting a lot of messages or anxiety or fear. So you might have asked yourself 100 times, is this my intuition or just my anxiety? You've Googled it, you've journaled about it, you've asked your therapist, and this episode is going to give you a clear body-based way to tell them apart in the actual moment, before you send the text, before you book the second date, before you talk yourself into something your body has already answered. So first thing is what fear actually sounds like in the body. And of course, it's different for everyone. And that's why you've got to do a little bit of your own, private investigative work on your own body and your own messages and signals. It's specific to everyone. But there are some common things you can look for to be really sure about it. One of those things is that fear spirals. It comes with rapid thoughts. Maybe your heart is beating fast. There might be worst case scenarios that you're spinning out on, all of the worst things that could happen, maybe judgments about yourself or about him, and a lot of what ifs, like what if this happens, what if that happens, what if I get stuck in this, what if, I spend another 6 months wasting my time. And it feels very urgent, it's very loud, and it's rapid fire feeling. It's exhausting. And it will tend to really amp up an anxiety-like feeling, and it will feel like adrenaline. It'll feel like you're in fast forward, and it's like something that you have to deal with right this second. And it also tends to go on, and it just gets worse and worse, so it amps up. And the other way to think about a fear-based thought or experience is that it always has a reason not to do the thing. So it will be telling you a million different reasons why you shouldn't go on the date, or a million different scenarios of what's going to happen and why you should never waste your time, or why you shouldn't message this guy or answer this guy or whatever it is. And it's always like, absolutely not, don't do that. These are all the terrible things that will happen, or this is all the time wasting that'll happen if you do this. I have yet to have a fearful thought or a fearful experience that tells me to do something. It's always like, don't do that thing. And so the opposite of that is the intuition, and how that actually sounds in the body. And it's very quiet. It has a calming effect. It is very deep and spacious feeling. It's short. Like, your intuition does not give you a bunch of words or go on and on. The information or the wisdom of the intuition is always short, and it doesn't argue with itself. Whereas fear will ping pong back and forth and give you maybe it'll be this and maybe it'll be that, and go back and forth in a rapid fire way. Whereas intuition is very sure of itself. It's like there's the one answer, and it is open-ended sometimes. Sometimes it is more vague. But it feels very calming, and it feels very deep and philosophical. It feels like wisdom. So it's not going to argue with itself. It's just arrives as this simple knowing in whatever way it's going to come through. It could be a word that comes in, drops in. There's a feeling, maybe a feeling of the heart opening up or a joyful kind of feeling that settles in rather than spiraling or escalating. So an intuitive no is not like a panic attack. It's a stillness that says not this way or not now or just simply, this is not the best thing for you. An intuitive yes would feel like relief, like exhaling, that feeling of the spaciousness, like something clicking into place. And you have to figure out what it's going to be for you. And so that's why I always go into the yes and the no, figuring out what a yes and a no feels like in your body. But those are some good guidelines that you can really figure it out and be pretty sure, like 90% sure, knowing that it's either your intuition or your fear and being able to tell the difference between the two. The fear is always going to second guess you. The fear is always going to argue. The fear is going to be 100 different reasons why. And the intuition is just a very soft but firm feeling or position on something like this might not be best for you, or just go on the date or whatever it is, very small. It might not tell you the whole, it actually won't tell you the whole thing. It will just give you the next step or the next feeling of this is what we're going to deal with right now. And the one question that cuts through both intuition and the fear, when you genuinely cannot tell which is speaking, you can ask, if I knew I would be completely safe no matter what happened, what would I choose? And that's where usually fear evaporates with that question and intuition will stay. A good scenario to think about an actual experience is a woman I worked with who spent like 3 days spiraling after she had told a guy that she liked him and she was interested in him, and they had this sort of back and forth, hot and cold type of flirting, not flirting, never knowing what was going on. And so I had advised her to just tell him how she was feeling and how she felt about him to get things to stop being hot and cold and to actually get an answer. And she had told him, had messaged him or something, and she hadn't heard back from him. It was just radio silence. And so she started spiraling and spent 3 days being like, oh my God, this and that. And she was convinced that her intuition was telling her something was wrong with the connection. And what her body was actually running was this old fear loop of being invisible or being rejected. And she just spent that whole time spiraling. And the way she learned the difference was when she actually did get an answer and then could look at it, look back on it, which is sometimes the way we get our clarity is, hindsight is 20/20. So she thought about it afterwards because he actually did reject her. He said, I just want to be friends and I only think of you as a friend, those things. And regardless of whether he was misleading her or not, that was not really the issue. It was just how she was feeling about that situation. She was really getting activated and she wanted to make him like her, or she wanted to do everything she possibly could to convince him to like her. And obviously we know that doesn't work. And so what she really got out of it was the spiraling was about feeling that sense of rejection and being invisible. Whereas her intuition had been quietly telling her, you did the right thing. You spoke up. You voiced your feelings and your needs and was trying to tell her, like, you did an awesome thing. Like, this was really great. And this is exactly the way it's meant to be, because it wasn't the way she wanted it to turn out, but it turned out in a perfect way, because then she stopped with that pattern and she was able to let him go and move on and have the actual space to find someone who is going to meet her fully and to show up fully. And so in that way, her intuition was guiding her, like, you did the excellent thing. You spoke out, you spoke up. And the spiraling was really about feeling invisible and feeling rejected. And she could really see the difference afterwards looking at it that way. And so one prompt that you can take with you for today is asking yourself, am I in a fear spiral right now? Or am I in a rejection spiral, or feeling, anxiety about being rejected? Or is there something quiet underneath it trying to get my attention? And giving that space for that quiet underneath wisdom to come through. So I highly recommend you do some journaling and introspection around that. Asking, am I in a fear spiral right now? Or is there something quiet underneath trying to get my attention? And you can do that in real time. You can do that in the date. You can go to the bathroom and do a little check-in with yourself, or after the date, whatever it is, in real time, and then see what comes forward when you give the invitation. What is the quieter underneath trying to tell you? And so I spoke last time about my Intuitive Path to Love course, and module 2 of the course is entirely dedicated to this practice that I talked about today in this episode. And it walks you through establishing your own yes and your own no in your body, so you can feel the difference before you act, rather than figuring it out 3 weeks later in hindsight. And the link is in the show notes for that. You can't make Mr. Unavailable love you, but you can choose someone who does. And remember, love is closer than you think. Thanks for listening. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps more women find this show. More support and free resources are at stopchasingunavailableguys.com. That's stopchasingunavailableguys.com. I'm Truly Eleanor. See you next time.